Okay. So the question was that how do we plan migration of on-prem data center to cloud, right? Or
Yes.
maybe from one data center to another data center. So this is going to be one specific question which is out of today's discussion, because today we are going to
Yes.
discuss about IAM and S3, right?
Okay.
But
Okay.
as
No
the
problem.
question came in between, so definitely I'm going to answer that question right away. So there are
Okay.
6 strategies for migrating application to cloud, right? And
Okay.
what these strategies are going to be, first of all, like how do we like formulate it? Obviously, like there's
Mm-hmm.
a formula for migration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So formulating a migration strategy. So what is the migration process? First of all, we have to understand that. So
Mm-hmm.
migration process means that you are going to lift, or maybe you are going to run the particular infrastructure in cloud, whatever you are running right now. So let us say you have
Yeah.
your on-prem data center, maybe you are running on to different environment, maybe you are running on Google Cloud or any other platform, right? So
Okay.
right now during migration, you are going to run the same environment with same sort of services onto a different vendor or maybe onto cloud, right? That sort of thing is known as migration. So as you
Yeah,
see
that's
here,
right.
first of all, like opportunity evaluation. Right now, the particular opportunity which you have here is, so you will have to evaluate each and every component of your application, whatever you are running. Application in the sense is not only about, let us say, mobile application. It is
Mm-hmm.
about the entire product. For example, how many web servers you are using, how many
Mm-hmm.
API servers you are using, what all components are there. Let us say you are using Apache Kafka, Pulsar, Aerospike, Cassandra, maybe Node.js, React, Go.
Okay.
Right? First of all, you will have to evaluate like what are the particular things which you are going to migrate. Right?
Okay.
Then
Okay.
after you will create a particular next plan which is known as portfolio discovery and planning. So what is portfolio
Okay.
discovery? So you will have to identify like which are the particular products which are running as a legacy application,
Mm-hmm.
right? Legacy in the sense like
Yeah.
monolithic application, you can call it
All
monolithic.
right.
That is a complete bundle of application which you are going to, which you are running as of today on your on-prem data center. So do you need to migrate it as it is? Because it could be possible, because so many vendors are there, even on big,
Okay.
even big organizations are there where this is a biggest challenge.
Okay.
Let us say they are still running on RHEL 4, maybe on CentOS 4, maybe on Ubuntu 10, 12, or maybe 14. Even those sort of
Okay.
operating system which are not available even on AWS, on Google Cloud, maybe on Azure, right? Why it is
Okay.
so? Even the particular vendor, the particular operating system vendor, let us say Red Hat, obviously, like as of today, it is being owned by IBM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even
Yeah.
Red Hat is not going to provide support for RHEL 4, maybe
Okay.
RHEL 5, right? So
Right.
if the application is running there, application is being executed there, but you are not able to get the same sort of like dependency, same sort of stuff there. So how you are going to
Okay.
perform that? Obviously, you will have to perform lift and shift as it is,
Exactly.
because it could be possible even the developers who are like responsible, or who were responsible, I must say, that who
Mm-hmm.
developed that application, the developers have left the organization now, but still the application is running, the code base is there, and even nobody is going to touch upon that, right? So when
Right.
you will have to take care of that particular part. Then after you will have to go for like application designing part. Right now the portfolio discovery and the particular planning is done, that how many applications are there which
Mm-hmm.
can be migrated or which can be like recreated on the top of AWS, right?
Yeah. Correct. Correct.
Yes. Okay. So then after like when we are talking about that, we will have to go for migration validation. Like what is migration? So migration means, so either you are going to shift from on-prem to AWS, and
Mm.
after moving this particular stuff from on-prem to AWS, you are going to be validating the same. So this sort of stuff is going to be there. Then after you will have to like launch the application, then after you will start operating that. So these are going to be like particular like process of migrating. So like designing migration and validation application, so this is also going to be part of our migration plan. Like modern application model we will discuss about. Like let us say if you are performing any of the operation in manual manner, so you can go for, you can adopt like DevOps culture there. Moreover, the particular application which was being developed in format of maybe waterfall, like SDLC, like software development methodology, which is known as, that was waterfall. So right now you can adopt DevOps culture. You can start deploying it multiple times, even in a single day. you can reduce your downtime, right? So these sort of operations, these sort of things you will have to manage. Moreover, when we talk about 6 R's, so what it is going to be? So like application migration strategies, the 6 R, what are the particular R's here? We are going to discuss that particular part here. So these are going to be 6 strategies. What are these 6 strategies? Because we cannot say that we will only like recreate. Like what is recreate? Let us say you are running an Apache web server in your on-prem data center, and you are going to execute it on the top of AWS. So that is not going to be the single strategy here. So we will have to think of like what all ways could be there. First of all, we will have to think of rehosting, otherwise known as lift and shift. So the particular first R is for stand for rehosting. It means the particular infrastructure which you are running in your on-prem, so you will lift and shift as it is, right? So that is known as lift and shift strategy. How do we perform it? So we find that many early cloud project. What is early cloud project? So it means that like you have any monolithic application and you cannot migrate that to any new server. So you will have to perform lift and shift mechanism here. You have no other way. You will have to create image of your existing AWS. You will have to create an image of your existing operating system which is running in your on-prem. You will have to create image of it, and after that you will boot the server from the same image. What are the particular tools you are going to use for that? You should keep that particular in mind. So cloud and your migration, there is a particular third party vendor. Obviously this has been acquired by AWS itself. So this particular tool is going to be very, very useful for migration. So cloud and your migration, this particular is going to be very, very useful for you. So right now, even this has been included as AWS part, but earlier this used to be a separate organization, right? Moreover, not only this particular part we should be thinking of, there are some other options as well available. So what these options are going to be, let me tell you that particular part. So this is going to be AWS VM import export. So this one was a particular additional like utility from the side of AWS, wherein we used to create image of our running operating system and we used to import that image to AWS, or maybe we used to export image to AWS. Then after we used to import, and then after we used to create a like in format of AMI, and then after we used to boot that particular, right? So once AMI is available, so AMI does like we do not bother about whether that is of like RHL 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8, whatever, right? Once image is available, we can boot that up in form of any virtual machine. Okay. What is seconds R? What is second R? So it is known as like re-platforming. What does it mean? Lift, thinker and shift. What does it mean? Let us say rather than performing it, like you are going to create the same server, what you can do here is like even you can plan. Let us say right now you are using your database on a particular like web virtual machine or maybe onto a physical server. Rather than creating the same database onto EC2 machine, you can think of like you can start using RDS. RDS means like relational database services. You can create your like you can start using database as a platform as service, right? So that sort of like option you have here. Because first of all you will have to think that what are the particular applications you are going to migrate. Moreover, like if you want that you are running a particular component on individual virtual machines, you have a particular code base, you have a tar file, you have a jar file, or maybe you have a code as a zip. So rather than creating on EC2 machine, you can directly start using Amazon Business Stock. So even right now what we are going to do here is we can think of re-platforming the particular services, right? Moreover, if we talk about like repurchasing, so moving to a different product, what does it mean? So let us say if you are thinking of that rather than moving your, let us say you are using any SaaS platform or maybe you are using any CRM. So even you can thinking of to go with different vendor, right? For example, you are using any HR system. So you can, let us say you are using any XYZ HR system. So then after migrating it to AWS, you can purchase a new license of say that particular CRM. So you can go with maybe some other vendor. Maybe you can go with ABC, right? Then after refactoring or re-architecting, what does it mean? For example, right now you are running each and every application on a virtual machine. So when you are planning to migrate it to AWS, what you can do here is rather than running a particular virtual machine known as EC2 inside AWS, what you can do here is, so you can think of that right now, rather than creating EC2 machine only, you can plan to make it containerized, right? So like you can go for refactoring or maybe re-architecting. So the particular existing architecture, you can think of that we can start utilizing some other components here. So that is considered under refactoring. Moreover, you can think of like if there was a virtual machine which was like running with very high resources on AWS on premises platform. So right now you can refactor that, or maybe you can go with some new or maybe some additional component you can start using here. Moreover, like rather than running it on a virtual machine, you can start using containers. You can go with Kubernetes, you can go with ECS, you can go with EKS, or any sort of containerized application you can start thinking of. You can start looking into like new options which are available. Like if you are looking to migrate your monolithic architecture, so obviously what you can do here is, so it can be like serverless. So even you can go with Lambda function, right? So this will help in two ways. First of all, your application will be broken into like microservices. Moreover, the particular enhancement is there, but obviously being DevOps engineer only, you are not going to be a like decision making authority here. You will have to have a proper discussion with all the developers as well, right? So after having a proper discussion, because see, if you say that you are going to use microservices, you are going to deploy that application onto any container, and if that container does not have all the dependencies what are required to execute the code, maybe the particular fonts which your developer has used are available only on a virtual machine. These fonts are not available into your Docker container image, right? So obviously your application will start failing, and that will be a complete failure for the entire migration project. So before making it live, you will have to do a POC. It means proof of concept you will have to do. But in order to like go for POC even, so you will have to have a proper discussion, and even that particular discussion should be like in writing. Then after getting proper approval from all the teams, only then you can plan for migration, right? Moreover, retire. So this is the fifth R here, retire. What does it mean? Let us say if there is a particular component where only like n number of hits are coming, let us say 10 to 20 hits are coming per day, not more than that. Or moreover, like if you think that this particular component is really not necessary as of today, or maybe this can be shifted with some other feature, right? Or maybe with some other service. So rather than migrating that component from on-prem to on-premises to AWS, you can plan to retire it, or maybe you can club that particular feature with some other component. So even retiring is a particular like fifth R here. Now what is next? So next is known as like revisit. Usually this means like retain means revisit or do nothing for now. So if there is any particular component which you can keep on-prem, and might be in coming time you might plan for migration of the particular component that is like completely isolated like environment, so you can retain that, right? So when you are just riding your migration project, whenever you are driving your migration project, so these particular 6 R needs are supposed to be in your mind, like what is going to be rehosting and everything is supposed to be there, right? So if you talk about these particular components, like what these R's are going to be, so let me make this particular little this picture a little larger for you guys. So first of all, what is going to be here, like discover, access and prioritize application. Let us say you have multiple component within your product, so you will have to prioritize, like first of all you need to migrate which particular part of application. Moreover, you need to be quite sure, let us say you have not migrated your entire product or maybe your entire application in a single go. So you will have to ensure, let us say if your web servers are running in cloud and your API server or maybe your database is running in on-prem, so you will have to ensure that the connectivity is there. You will have to ensure that how much latency you are going to bear. For example, right now the response time of your website is maybe 200 millisecond, and if that is increasing maybe 800, maybe 1000 millisecond, or maybe that is going beyond 1 second, so it means you will have to increase the particular capability of your VPN connection, maybe the particular AWS direct connect connection, whatever you are going to have. That sort of thing you need to take care of. Moreover, apart from this, like retain, not moving, so what application you will plan not to move, or what application you are going to like retire, or you are going to decommission the application. So now when you will have to like prepare a list of these applications as well, like which you are not moving, And obviously, like, it is not only you who is going to be responsible for making these decisions. So even developers are going to be part of it, testers are going to be part of it, and even each and every individual stakeholder in your organization has to be part of this activity when you are going to make these sort of decisions. Now determine migration plan. So what migration plan you are going to go with? So either you are going to go with rehosting, maybe lift and shift you are planning now, or replatforming, like determine new platform. Maybe earlier you were using Go, right now you are planning to go with React, or maybe Node, or maybe any other sort of programming language, right? Modify underlying hardware. So let us say earlier you were using PHP 5, now you are going with 7, right? That sort of thing you will have to do. Maybe repurchase. Earlier you were using like SaaS based licensing for of any individual. Now what you can do here is, right now even you can go with manual installation and setup. You can plan here. Maybe you can purchase a particular new vendor authorization when everything is done up. So like whether that is going to be like manual install, manual configuration, manual deploy, whether that is going to be your automated purpose, end of the day you will have to perform the validation checks here, that each and every component whatever you have migrated, whether any of the approach, maybe refactoring, repurchasing, replatforming, maybe rehosting, whatever you have done, end of the day everything ends up with a validation. So once you are going through validation, then after you will do, like, you will have to go for transition, and after that the particular production live. It means at end of the day your end goal should be your production live. So either one by one or all in a go, that will be depending on the criticality and the particular like architecture of your application. This is how you are going to plan for your migration, right? So these 6 are going to be main key factors in order to determine the particular policy, or maybe you can call that particular the strategy of migration, right?
Okay. Thank you.
So is there any other one who has any question on the top of it, like migration and all? Guys, do you have any question? Any question, guys?
So as you mentioned, like we can use the migration tool. Do you have any idea about that migration tools? So we can also look into that tools.
So first of all, we have to like have a very clear picture like what we are going to migrate. There are a couple of questions like what, how, when, the downtime, the particular RTO, RPO, the particular DR setup and planning. This sort of thing we should have in our mind before planning for any sort of like tool or maybe any sort of services. So there are specific like migration and transfer tools are available here on the platform of AWS, like AWS Migration Hub is there, like like application discovery services there. So this is going to discover application on your on-prem, and obviously it will create an inventory for you. Moreover, it will discover the dependencies of your application, right? Then after database migration service, so let us say if you are running your on-prem data center into a virtual machine, for sure, like you will not have an RDS option available. So if you want that your database should be migrated, and moreover, it should be converted into RDS. So this sort of service you can use. Like server migration service we have. If you have like monolithic application, so you can migrate that. Like you can migrate on-prem server to AWS, like AWS transfer family. Like if you have SFTP, FTP, or maybe like FTPS servers running on your on-prem data center and you want to migrate it to AWS services, then definitely this option will be utilized. Like if you have a very like heavy amount of data in the sense, let us say not only in GB and TB or maybe PB, if you have data in exabyte, right? So even that sort of database, how you are going to migrate that? If you try to migrate that data over wire, then definitely that is going to be a particular rocket science. That is going to be brain surgery sort of stuff. You will definitely not be able to complete a migration within years even. Why it is so? The particular amount of data which you are going to transfer from your on-prem to AWS, right? If you have data in exabyte, so obviously you must be having a very big amount of application. You must be having a very big volume of data, right? So amount of data what you will keep on transferring to AWS, so new data will keep on generating. So that will be a particular like infinite loop. The previous data will keep on moving from on-prem to AWS, and new data will keep on generating. So in order to shift your data in a single go, what you can do here is, so like first of all, you will set up the particular incremental backup from today. The particular day you are going to use Snow family in order to transfer data from on-prem to AWS. So you will use Snow family, that is going to be like a device which AWS will share with you, and obviously AWS will charge you for that. And finally you have like data sync. So these sort of migration services you can explore. So does that answer your question, Maharaj?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, now we are going to go with our main agenda for today, and that was IAM. So yes, guys, first of all, let me ask you, what is IAM?
So it's identity access management uh, service. So we can create the user group policies and roles to provide the access to a specific user instead of the root account. So in short, we can say that for more secure our AWS account and perform multiple activities on the multiple role, we can use the identity access management, and we can provide the access or as per the requirement.
Okay, so the very first question here is, which I would like to discuss with you. I hope that we all are aware of that. What is group? So group is going to be logical collection of users. What is a user? So user is a logical identity of a person, process of or anything, right? User
Yes,
is going to be a logical identity of a person, process, or any service, right? Now,
right.
what are roles? So as we assign access to any individual, like any human, right? Like I can assign access either to myself or to you or to any other one in the team. So that is going to be user. So how do we assign access? So obviously we associate some policies or maybe with some permissions directly to a user. But let us say if I want that my EC2 machine should be able to upload some data, maybe that could be log, that could be any sort of transactional data. If I want my resources to be able to upload data into S3 bucket, then I'm going to use roles here, right? So roles are associated to resources and permissions are directly associated to users. Now, the very first interview question which here is, so what one should I use? Like what one is more secure, user or role?
So again, it's depend on the requirement. In case we want to perform some action from a specific service to, for an example, if EC2 want to access any service, for example, S3, then we have to use the role, and we need to attach that role to that specific service, and then we can access that service which the role have the permission.
But Maharaj, my
But
question was, which is more secure?
more secure is the roles permissions, but again we need to provide some access to the users in case he is performing some action on the AWS account. So if you are just talking about the more secure, then for me it will be role, and the reason behind that, uh, role we can assign to any service, and we can give the access to user for that particular service. For an example, if I want to upload the data on the S3, then I can create a role, and I can assign the permission to that role, and that role can be attached to the EC2 instance, and to end user I can give the access to EC2 instance only. So that will be more secure, because we don't need to give the access of AWS account. We just need to give the access for a specific EC2 instance or a specific service.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So let me make the thing clear. So that completely, obviously the particular very first statement which you gave, that was like that depends on the need. So like either user or role are not going to be like, there is no comparison in terms of security here, that which is more secure, why it is so. So if you are going to grant permission to users, so users are going to be responsible for any individual action performed by them. Moreover, roles are going to be like unique for any individual resources wherever you will associate the role, and any of the user who has access to that resource will be also allowed to perform operations like as per the access granted to that role. For example, there is a particular EC2 machine created, and on that particular EC2 machine we have associated a particular role where S3 access is granted with admin access, right? So all the three users, let us say Tom, Dick, and Harry, there are three users. If all the three users are able to log into that S3 machine, sorry, is that EC2 machine, so they will be allowed to perform any sort of operation from that machine on S3 bucket. So over here, some challenges are also there, but definitely like even rules are required. Why it is so? Because we need to perform some operation, like we need to authenticate one service to be able to access other services. Second thing, like what are the best practices of AWS IAM? So obviously, like grant least privilege access. We need to provide, like need to have basis, we need to provide access. Let us say if someone is going to perform any operation maybe for like a day or two, then definitely temporary access should be given. That could be automated way or that could be a manual way, but as soon as the particular task is completed, we are supposed to revoke the access from the person. First thing. Second thing here is, like the person should be granted minimal access. Minimal means, let us say if a person is supposed to like check only the IP address of EC2 machine, then only read access is supposed to be granted. Maybe read and list access is supposed to be granted, write access should not be given. Moreover, we are supposed to do AWS organizations. What does it mean? Like AWS organization is a feature of AWS wherein like we can isolate the resources. Let us say some developers are there which require maybe the particular write access for any individual service. So what you are going to do here is, on production account, only DevOps team or maybe your AWS cloud team or maybe like operation team has access to AWS resources or maybe to the particular servers. But in case of development, so you can grant some like limited access to developers as well, right? Moreover, single sign-on, rather than providing them individual username and password, you can use like enable identity federation. What does it mean, identity federation? So either you can use Cognito or maybe single sign-on like SSO, which is known as like single sign-on service you can use here. So that sort of thing should be enabled. Moreover, you should like enable MFA. MFA means multi-factor authentication. So every single person, whether using like CLI or whether using GUI access, maybe this particular console access, so user should provide MFA. It means multi-factor authentication. Every single account should be enabled with MFA for all users who are supposed to be authenticated in order to log into AWS IAM console, maybe to this AWS console, right? Moreover, there has to be
One
yes,
one question, Lokendra.
please.
Does this CLI access also has the MFA authentication?
So if you want, so you can have, but ideally that is not required because whenever we are talking about CLI, so over there we have to pass the access key and secret ID. So that is already authenticated.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk
So
about like credential rotation, so it means you will have to perform this operation regularly. Moreover, you will have to enforce the policy. Let us say you will have to enforce the policy that password will expire after 45 days or maybe after 90 days, or that will be depending on the particular criteria which is set from your security team. That will also be depending on the particular like level of audit which you are going through. Let us say it is SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, maybe it is HIPAA, PCI DSS, or maybe any sort of compliance, right? Or maybe ISO certification you are going for. So in order to be very, very compliant with all these sort of like regularities or like these sort of certification, so you will have to rotate your keys. You will have to rotate your password on a like certain time limit defined by them. Obviously it should not be like every single day or maybe every single week, but at least like once in 90 days or maybe once in 45 days you are supposed to rotate your rotate your password, and at least once in a year you are supposed to rotate your access key or secret ID, right? That sort of things are supposed to be there. Moreover, you need to enable AWS IAM access analyzer. So who has what type of access, how many users are going to be there, how many users have access on like each and every component. So you will define that particular like analyze public. So who are going to have access to your account? Maybe how many users from cross account has access to your AWS resources? Maybe cross account like organization access. So what sort of access you have here, right? So that sort of component you need to review on like the very timely manner. And there has to be a particular process that every single month, or maybe every like 2 months, 3 months, or whatever like time period you guys are going to define. So that has to be a complete process in order to provide and revoke access whenever someone is going to join organization. So for sure you need to like have a written approval with you before granting access. Moreover, as soon as the particular person is going to leave the organization, so you are supposed to have a particular checklist where you need to define that yes, now user has left the organization, and now we are going to revoke the access. That should be part of your checklist. Now, what are the particular new features in AWS? So obviously, guys, what sort of thing you are going to have here? Like we have access management, like our AWS identity and access management we have. So these are new things here, like new security policy you can define here. Moreover, like AWS IAM access analyzer now supports like archive rules for existing findings. So even you can have some findings, and obviously like based on your archive rules, your previous rules, it will help you to identify that. Moreover, what you can do, Amazon like deactivates like introduce IAM rule session analysis. So like who is going to access what, and when the particular person access your with the help of role or whatever. So these sort of new features are available there, right? Okay, so let us go with this. So let me
I have some questions on this, if you don't mind.
please go
So,
ahead.
yeah, it's about single sign-on, and before going to the single sign-on, I want to know like if I have multiple accounts. For example, I have 5 customer or 500 customer, and I'm managing their AWS account. So I want to put all these on the single sign-on, and how I will achieve this. And the second question, like if I'm using single sign-on, then definitely it will be come through any authentication service like LDAP or
AD.
Active Directory. So how we will manage the manage the permission there? Like if I am the I'm a person from the IT team or the DevOps team, and another from the development side. So how we will manage the services there, services and the permissions
Okay. So
for all the
in
accounts?
that case, what you are going to do here is you will have like ADFS, like Active Directory Federation Service. On
Yes.
ADFS, you will have to manage that what all organizations are there. You will create multiple organizations there, because under AD you can create different organizations. You will create users. You will map all the users created under different organizations. Like let us say 10 users from one organization, 20 users from different organization, and so on and so forth. Then after once you integrate your AD with this particular account, so all the users who have access based on the role which you define within your AD, so those users will be able to access your AWS resources based on their access provided on AD.
So I have to create the user in AWS account as well.
No, 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 no. So all the users which are created into AD, so those users will be able to access your AWS resources here.
Yes. And how the permission will be managed?
Okay, so over here, whenever you will integrate AD with AWS, so the particular sort of resource and the particular sort of like user group which you are going to create into your AD. So based on that particular permission, because see, whenever we are going to integrate AWS with AD, like obviously that AD will also be created into AWS only because we have ADFS service available here within AWS itself. So that particular AD you can integrate here based on some like STS, like simple token service.
Okay.
Yes. So that
I
is a
will check,
that
and
is a,
in case I will be face some issue, then I will come to you again, because I want to
what?
do this practically. And in case I will face any issue, then I will come to you again.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Not a problem. I'll be there
Yeah.
to help. Okay, guys. So what next we are going to do here is, so let us talk about like users. So guys, there is a particular question. Let us say I have a user. The particular name of that user is going to be maybe Lokendra, right? I have assigned the particular programmatic and AWS console access as well. Password is going to be automated. I want that user should be able to reset the password and all, whatever you want, right? I'll add permissions here. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to attach permissions here. Maybe I want to grant administrator access, right? Right, guys? I want to assign admin
Yes.
access to this user, but I do not want that this user should be able to access S3. How will you achieve it? I want that this user should be able to do anything, like administrator access should be given, but the user should not be able to access S3. How will you control it? So there are two ways. Either rather than assigning administrator access, you will have to check all the boxes excluding this one, right? This is the first way. Otherwise, the second way which AWS has provided here is, so you can set permission boundary here. Create user without a permission boundary, or use a permission boundary to control the maximum user permissions. So over here, the particular service, like what you will do here is you will go for S3, like you will define it like S3 full access. So you can define like this. So full access onto AWS resources and permission boundary on S3. So it means you will have to create both. It means all except this. So this is going to work like except rule. Right, guys?
Right. Absolutely right.
Yes. So actually, this sort of questions are asked during interview. Okay, one more thing I would like to discuss here. So when we talk about role, so like how a role is, okay, there can be an interview question like, can I associate a role with a user?
No.
Let us create a role. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, we need to see like these particular four options are available here. First of all, like AWS services like EC2, Lambda, and others. Like another AWS account, like if you want that you are going to create some like another, yeah, like you want to provide access to some user from some other AWS account, right? So let us say account ID is 123 123 123 123, right? That sort of ID it is going to be. So like either you want like require external ID, best practice when third party will assume this rule. So this is known as assume rule, right? What is going to be external ID? So you can define that external ID as well. And what it is going to be? The console does not support using the external ID with the switch rule feature. So whenever you are going to grant access onto your resource, right? So whenever you are going to define a particular like switch assume role feature, so this like if you are going to select this option, so entities in the trusted account must use API, CLI, or a custom federation proxy to make like cross account IAM assume role. So this is known as assume role. So in fact, like sometime even during interview, people might ask you what is assume role here, right? So even you can like define that MFA will be required in order to do so. So in this manner, like you will have to create a role in order to provide access to such a user who is working or who is created in a different AWS account, or maybe to a third party vendor.
So it's something like if I created for an example, I created an AMI and I want to share that AMI with multiple accounts. So we can use
That is
same.
something different.
Okay.
So in that case, you are going to make that AMI like accessible with multiple AWS accounts, right? But
Yes,
right
same
now,
same with the other resources. I can take an example from the VPC as well. So if I created a VPC, so I can use that
so
VPC.
VPC cannot be shared across account, right? Only peering is required there to access that.
Something like a template, like I can create a template and that template I can use in another account for easy my work or
No,
something
no,
like.
no, no, no. That does not happen. That is not the use case here. So right now what we are trying to talk here is, let us say I want you to I want you to manage my AWS account, but I don't want to create your user in my account.
Okay, now I got it.
I want you to manage couple of resources in my AWS account, but I don't want to create your user here.
Yes.
So like another AWS account belonging to you or any third party, as you can read it here,
Yes.
right? Maybe if you want to create a web identity, maybe Cognito or OpenID provider, so you can you can create that sort of role as well here. Moreover, like SAML or maybe federation services, so you will have to create, or maybe you will have to provide a particular SAML, it means security assertion markup language provider you will have to create. So if you want to create that particular here, so you can definitely you definitely have this option. You can create any federation service or maybe identity provider here. So what identity providers are available here? So either that is going to be SAML, it means security assertion markup language, or either that is going to be OpenID Connect. I hope the particular person who is like working on AWS, they must definitely have used this sort of features here, right? So it is going to be like get like thumbprint. So like once you will define the particular URL, like where from you are going to be authenticated, it could be like OpenID Connect, like there could be multiple, like it could be Google, Salesforce, maybe Gmail or that sort of services. It could be, right? So once you get the particular thumbprint, after that you will definitely you will specify the particular who are going to be audience here, who are going to be who are going to be like who are supposed to log into your AWS account, right? So that sort of validation you will have to provide here. So right now we are aware of SAML, we are aware of OpenID Connect, and we should be aware of like identity provider as well, like what all identity provider can you can have here. So either SAML or OpenID Connect, right? Moreover, like okay, one more thing here. Let us say, so guys, do you have any questions so far?
So in case we will be go for the practical of SAML or the OpenID, is there any way so we can get the charge for this?
Definitely you can go for it.
Is it chargeable?
Yes, couple of resources are going to be chargeable. Like a
Okay.
very less amount you will have to pay, maybe couple of dollars maximum $2 to $3 only. If you want to do practical only.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So the identity provider, like we have just seen. So if we talk about policy, so like policy, like there are a couple of questions related to policy as well. So let us say I have a scenario here. I have a question for you. So I want that a user, the name of user is going to be Lokendra. So Lokendra user should be able to create resources, maybe easy to resources in North Virginia region only. Resource in the sense, let us say AWS EC2 machine. I want that user should be able to create machine in EC2 machine only. And especially I want to define that only ABC AMI is there, which should be accessible by user Lokendra, no other AMI. How am I going to define that policy? Am I clear with my question?
Yes, for me, you are clear, and you are asking for the specific services, and in that specific services, you can perform the action only for the specific region. So there are a lot of limitation you are asking for so he can perform only the particular task which you want.
Yes. That's what I want. So how do I
Yes.
perform that?
So for that you have to create your own policy and
Okay, I'm going to create.
yeah. So here there are two method. One is this, and another you can go for the JSON, and there is a yes EC2 and action what you want. For example, all EC2 action, or you just want to list read tagging or write the permission. So it's up to you. And here in the resources you have to select the some options.
Which option do I need to select here?
We have to check this. Can you control F and AMI, something like this?
So yes, end of the day, you got the point, right?
Yes, but I have a question into this. If you will open the URL for the policy generator, AWS policy generator. This one, and here, if I want to generate a policy like EC2 should be access the S3 bucket. So how I will generate? I'm confused in this. Like effect should be allow, and what is the principle here?
So what is principal?
Yes.
The particular user who is going to access it.
Okay.
That is known as principal here. So right, like you got the point here, which I wanted to discuss, right?
Yes. Yes.
So guys, do you have any questions so far? Uthappa, Jairam, Amit. Guys, any question?
It's clear for us, I think. I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Uh, there is also a trust. I forgot the name. Can you edit any policy, or you can create this policy like EC2 should have access, all access, and just create the policy. No, no, not from here, from IAM management console. Or just create a user and put a permission there so I can come to know the AWS service. Yes, yes, on the previous one. Create a user. Yes.
User is already there. Hmm?
No. Yeah. Okay. Put any permission here. Anyone which you want.
Okay.
Yes, create. Go to the user.
Yes.
And yes, permissions boundary, and here is where it is.
Yes.
I
What do you
think
want to ask here?
I think I'm missing something. I have to check myself and then I will come to you.
Okay, not a problem. So I hope that we are clear with this, right?
Yes, we are clear.
So even we have access analyzer here. We have archive rules. We have analyzer settings. So these sort of things we can easily manage here. Like in fact,
Yes.
you can download credential report.
Yes.
So this particular option is here like credential report. You can download it. Download report like who has what sort of access. Like the click the button to download a report. Like that list all your account users and status of their various credential. Right?
Right.
Okay. So now let us go to S3 because we wanted to cover both the services today. Okay. So like couple of questions are there which I would like to discuss with you. So like how many buckets can be created by default in our AWS account? How many buckets can we create in our AWS account?
Yeah, I came to know when I asked because still we didn't start on S3.
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, go to the roles and there is a option trust relationship.
Okay, that is for STS, simple
Yes.
trusted service.
Any example you can give us so we will be.
Let us say if you want that trust relationship works when you are going to authenticate some users which are not created in your own platform. Let us say you want to integrate AD in order to allow users to log into your AWS console. Right.
So
So at
between
that
the.
moment we have to go for trust relationship.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm going to delete this particular bucket. Okay, these are the some F access point which are created here. I need to delete these sort of things are there. Really, it is really hard to manage a dummy account, and especially the such account which we are using for demo purpose only. So I'm going to delete these buckets. Okay. So first of all, I would like to ask you a question like how many storage classes are there? How many storage classes are available on AWS S3?
You are asking like infrequent access storage class, something like this.
Yes.
Then don't know how much.
Any other one? Guys, any answer for the question? Okay. The very first thing here is okay, these are the storage classes here. Like we have standard IA, and sometimes people like to ask that what are the use cases here? That why do we select what sort of storage class? So like frequently access data should be kept on standard storage. If you have data which is going to live for long time, but the particular frequency of data is very low, so at that moment you can go with this particular like frequently access data. Long lived infrequent access data. Once on IA, the particular data which is not very, very critical, even if the data is lost, so you need not to worry about, you can regenerate the data. But if that is available, that is fine. We can keep it on like one zone IA because over here your availability zone is going to be one only. Moreover, like you have like reduced redundancy wherein like you have like frequently access non-critical data. What does it mean like non-critical? So if the data is lost, you need not to worry about, let us say some of the transaction logs are missing, so you need to worry about maybe some of the images which you have on your server as well as in S3. So if a couple of images are missed, so that is not going to be a challenge. It means the data which is not required for audit purpose, that can be kept here in RR. It means reduced redundancy storage. Intelligent tiering. So when you do not have idea about like what is going to be frequency of your file access, moreover you do not have a fixed pattern of the data accessibility, so at that moment you are going to use like intelligent tiering, right? Moreover, like when you talk about glacier, so when you know very well that like long term data archiving is required, for example you are compliant with HIPAA, right? Or maybe PCI DSS. So like in HIPAA, hospital authorized agency says that like any record of any patient should be kept with the hospital for like at least 10 years. Reason being, if a customer is insured with some insurance policy, maybe a particular customer of hospital, which is a patient. If that patient is like insured with any like insurance policy, so insurance policy can ask you anytime for the previous records as well. So in that case, if you are compliant with HIPAA, so definitely you will have to track, you will have to keep the track of all the patients for last 10 years. So that sort of data should not be kept on standard storage. Why it is so? Because it is going to be really, really expensive for you, because you do not have only single customer data, you might have thousand and maybe like several customers you might have. So in order to like manage these sort of things, what you are going to do here is, so obviously you are going to manage, okay, even Uthappa is going, not a problem. Okay, so like in that case we are going to go with archive like Glacier. And moreover, like if you want to have, like if you want to have like data for maybe like year or two, or maybe for 10 years, maybe for 20 years, so right, so you can use deep like Glacier Deep Archive. But obviously you need to keep in mind, so all the storage classes like standard IA, one zone IA, reduced redundancy storage, intelligent tiering, so they are going to provide you the access of data on immediate basis. But Glacier and Deep Archival Glacier are going to be like this sort of data storage classes will not like let you access your data in like on immediate basis. You will have to raise a request in order to access your data, and it can take from minutes to hour in term of Glacier. But like Deep Archive, it is going to take up to like 12 hours. Not 12 hours exactly, it could be like possible within 30 minutes you might get data, but you should assume that you are going to get data within 12 hours. It might take several hours as well in order to provide you the data, right? That is a particular storage classes here. Now let us talk about what is versioning here. So versioning means, let us say if you want to upload multiple files, if you want to upload multiple files with different name, so that does not require versioning. Why? So every file is going to be different. But if you want to upload same file with different data with same name, so in that case you need to have versioning enabled. Why it is so? Because sometimes it happens that you might miss the particular data, right? So in that case, what is going to happen? So you should be thinking of that if versioning is enabled, so every time you are going to upload the new file, so previous file will not be deleted. There will be a particular deletion marker for that, and obviously like your latest file will be available and accessible at this particular page. But every single version which you update, that will be kept in S3 bucket. So as and when you want, you can download that particular, like previous version even you can download. Moreover, if you talk about like versioning, so any sort of component you can see here. So this is known as like bucket versioning. You can enable or you can suspend, right? So guys, keep this thing in mind. There is an interview question. This is an interview question as well, like how can I disable versioning of my S3 bucket? So guys, keep this thing in mind. If once you enable versioning, you are not allowed to like disable it, you can only suspend it. So the particular like the bucket functionality, how it is going to behave, like how will it be impacted? So lifecycle rules set for the previous version will still apply. It means the particular rule which you created earlier and you have suspended versioning, so all the rules will be in effect. Moreover, existing objects in your bucket do not change. So let us say if you have 10 version available of any individual object, so these 10 version will not be deleted if you do not have any policy implemented. Newly added objects with the same name and existing objects are replaced with existing object, right? So like that will be only for the latest version. Like acknowledge and confirm the like suspension of versioning, suspending bucket versioning if you want to save these changes. So it means that is API error some. Okay, so like I implemented a rule here, and that rule says that I will have to go for like CRR, it means cross region replication. So that is why this particular like option was giving me an error. Moreover, if we talk about permissions here, so what sort of permission do we have? So obviously like you can block access to your object. You can create a custom bucket policy. Like if you talk about ownership, so obviously you can have like your custom ACLs enabled here, right? Then after these sort of options are available here, what all metrics are there, you can check how many objects are there, what is going to be size of it, everything you can figure out, total number of objects in the bucket. So earlier these sort of options were not available, but recently these sort of things are also these sort of things are also made available for you. Even like now S3 is connected with CloudWatch. So you can check this particular thing in CloudWatch as well. If you talk about management, so there is a particular rule, guys. So there is a particular question like, what is AWS lifecycle rule? What is S3 lifecycle rule? Any idea about, guys, this particular option, lifecycle rule?
Yes, the life cycle rule is about the class moving, the data moving into the different classes.
Okay. So what are drawbacks of it?
Drawback, uh, I don't know about the drawback because we will be configure only as per the requirement. So I don't think so there is any drawback.
Okay, let me tell you one.
Yeah.
So let us say if you have like million of objects in your S3 bucket, but the particular size of these objects is very, very small, maybe 10 KB, 20 KB, 50 KB, 100 KB, 200 KB, like less than single MB, right?
Yeah.
So if you move your million of objects from one storage class to another, so every single time you are going to migrate, you are going to move your 1,000 objects. So AWS is going to charge you for like copying or maybe changing storage class. So changing storage class is going to perform, is going to be like treated as a like write operation. Okay. So if you have very small amount of like size of file which you have, like number of files are really a lot, but the size of files are very, very small. So in that case, you will have to pay even more which you were paying for your data storage. Let us say you were paying only $500 for like storing data into S3 bucket, and the amount of files, and sorry, I should say like the number of files were really huge. So even it could be possible while changing your storage class from standard to one zone IE or maybe one zone IE to intelligent tiering or so and so forth. So every time you are going to change the storage class, you will have to pay for that action performed, even more than the particular price which you are going to pay for like data storage. So even sometime if your number, if your the size of your objects are very, very small, so sometimes this operation becomes very, very expensive, right?
Right.
Yes, so these sort of things are there. So yes, guys, now it is your time to ask question. If you have any, so you can ask. So these were the like couple of interview questions which usually people like to ask. Moreover, if you want, so like we can discuss about maybe your AWS S3 being used as a static website hosting platform. So guys, how do we
Yes.
host it? Can we host a static website on S3?
Yes, we can.
Okay, then, and why? And sorry, and what will be the URL of that particular S3 bucket?
Mm, I don't know, but I know that this can be possible.
So it is going to be first of all your HTTP, then after a bucket
Okay.
name, then after it is going to be S3 website, then after your region of that particular bucket, then after Amazon AWS.com. This is going to be the URL of that S3 bucket. This is the URL which is accessible as a website. First of all, bucket name, then web like S3 website, then region of that particular bucket, then after the particular Amazon AWS.com. This is going to be the URL. Although people do not ask, but definitely you should know. That is why, just because to ensure this thing that you might have to host a website here. So like special characters are not allowed here. Moreover, like you cannot put a particular space in the name of this particular S3 bucket.
Yes, I have one more question. If I'm going to do some testing, which I need to, for which I need to perform the NFS URL. So can I mount this S3 on the EC2, or and after that I can install the NFS server and utils and I can export that mount point.
Okay,
So
let me tell you here. I got your point. So let me tell you here. It is not recommended. Technically, you can mount S3 bucket onto your EC2 machine, but this is not a recommended operation. Why it is so? There are two type of objects available on AWS platform. First of all, it is going to be object storage, that is S3, Second thing is going to be like block level storage, like that is going to be EBS. So we are
Yes.
supposed to mount only EBS volumes, like elastic block storage. We are supposed to mount onto EC2 machine.
Yes.
Right? If you mount your S3 and like multiple people are trying to access the same object at the same time, maybe some people are trying to like copy the same object from different servers. So in fact, your data may get corrupted. That is not
Okay.
recommended. But still, if you want to mount, then Fuse FS or S3 FS is the particular file system. So which you will have, like you will have to install additional packages onto the particular server wherever you are trying to mount your S3 bucket. Like
Okay.
technically you can mount, but ideally it is not recommended or suggested. But yes, if you want to have like common mount point like accessible to all the instances, then you can use EFS, like elastic file system. That works just like NFS.
Yeah, that is the other option, but just for some testing, like
You can
for
mount S3 bucket. You can mount S3 bucket onto an EC2 machine.
yes,
But internet accessibility should be there. As we
on
discussed
the
this, as we discussed this thing previously as well, in order to mount any S3 bucket or in order to copy data to any S3 bucket, the particular instances where from you want to perform the operation. So these instances should be either connected to like these instances should be placed behind NAT gateway or maybe behind internet gateway. If both the options are not available, then you will have to have like S3 access endpoint or maybe VPC endpoint here.
Yeah, so someone asked me in a interview like he want to put the data into S3, but he don't want to go through the internet.
So
So that
like VPC endpoint services there, or like you can have like endpoints you can create from here as well. As you can see that this is a particular option behind like under like bucket. You can create your you can create your access endpoint. So endpoint name you are going to define here. What is going to be the particular bucket name for which you want to create, or you can browse the particular S3 bucket. So yes, I can define here choose path. I'll choose a path here. It is going to be like VPC, like virtual login, like network origin, that is going to be VPC or maybe internet, whatever you want to define. In order to go with a VPC, you will have to define a VPC ID here. After that, you can define the access, what sort of access you want to define, and after that, you can create the particular access endpoint here. Because I did not specify VPC here, that's why it is not like allowing me to create, right?
yes, right.
Hmm. So well, thank you everyone. I will have to call it a day for today, right? And if you have any feedback for the session, you can please let me know.